Right now, there is a voice in your head. It has been there so long that most people assume it is them. It comments on everything. It judges. It compares. It worries. It calculates how you are doing relative to some invisible standard that keeps changing. You should have said that differently. You are behind where you should be. What will they think of this? That person has more. You are not enough for this. You are too much for that. Constant, running, automatic. Wayne Dyer spent 40 years making one essential distinction. That voice is not you. Not even close. It is the ego. And the ego is not an enemy to be destroyed. Not a flaw to be fixed. Not a pathology to be treated. It is a structure, a protective structure, built by your experience, to help you navigate the social world. It learned what to say to be accepted, what to hide to be safe, how to perform to receive approval, how to compete to feel worthy. It built a model, and it runs that model, constantly, automatically, even in situations where the model no longer helps. Even in situations where the model actively hurts. Wayne Dyer's great contribution was not identifying the ego. Many teachers have done that. His contribution was giving people a specific, practical, daily way to step outside of it, to access the self that exists when the ego is quiet, to discover, perhaps for the first time in a long time, who they actually are, underneath all the performing. That self is what he called the true self, and the journey toward it is what this video is about. Not as philosophy, as practice, as something you can begin tomorrow morning, at sunrise, in 5 minutes. Let me show you how. Let me be precise, because the word ego is used so loosely that it has almost lost its meaning. In everyday conversation, we say someone has a big ego when they are arrogant or boastful. That is not what Wayne Dyer meant by ego. In fact, in his framework, arrogance is one of the ego's defenses. One of its strategies, not its essence. The ego, as Dyer understood it, is the sum of all the roles and identities that you have built up in order to function in the social world. It includes your professional identity, your family identity, your cultural and social identity, your reputation, your self-image, your personal history as you understand it, the story you tell about who you are and how you got here. None of these are inherently bad. We need some sense of self to function. The problem arises when these identities, these constructed roles, are mistaken for who you fundamentally are. When you believe, at the deepest level, that you are your job, that you are your relationship status, that you are your past, that you are your reputation. Because all of those things change, jobs end, relationships shift, the past cannot be changed, but its meaning can shift. Reputations rise and fall. If your identity is built on things that change, your sense of self is perpetually unstable, perpetually dependent on outcomes, perpetually anxious about loss, perpetually performing to maintain what you have built. This is what Dyer called ego-based living, and the vast majority of human suffering is rooted in it. The alternative is what he called spirit-based living, or true self-living. It is the experience of an identity that does not depend on roles, that does not require performance, that does not need external validation, an identity that is there, before the job, after the relationship, regardless of reputation, independent of what anyone thinks. That identity exists in every human being, without exception, including you. Finding it is the most important journey a person can take. And it begins with understanding the 5 ways the ego is currently running your life. Wayne Dyer identified 5 specific mechanisms through which the ego controls the lives of the vast majority of people. Recognizing each one in your own daily experience is the first step to freedom. Mechanism 1. The approval dependency. The ego's fundamental question, in almost every social situation, is, what will they think of me? Before you speak, before you act, before you decide, before you create, before you try, what will they think? This question, asked compulsively, as the primary filter for your choices, makes you a prisoner. Prisoner of other people's perceptions, of other people's comfort, of other people's expectations, of what you imagine other people might possibly think, which is often not even what they think at all. Mechanism 2. The comparison compulsion. The ego cannot simply exist. It needs to know where it stands relative to others. Am I ahead or behind? Am I more or less? Am I better or worse? And this compulsion has no finish line. Because the ego finds a new comparison point Every time you pass the last one, you get the thing you wanted, the promotion, the relationship, the achievement, and within days or weeks, the ego finds someone who has more. Something you don't have, a new comparison, a new inadequacy. The comparison compulsion is the fastest way to remain perpetually dissatisfied, regardless of how much you accumulate. Mechanism 3. The fear of failure. The ego's deepest fear is not failure itself. It is being seen to fail, being seen as inadequate, as not enough, as someone who tried and couldn't. This fear talked you out of more things than any external obstacle ever has. More opportunities not pursued, more conversations not had, more creative work not attempted, more authentic expressions suppressed, all to avoid the risk of being seen, not measuring up. Mechanism 4. The attachment to being right. The ego invests heavily in its positions, its opinions, its interpretations, because being wrong feels like a threat to the self, which leads to defensiveness, to arguments sustained well past their usefulness, to relationships damaged, because someone could not say, "I was wrong. I am sorry." Mechanism 5. The separation story. The ego's most fundamental belief is that you are separate, separate from others, separate from the world, separate from whatever you understand as the source of life, an isolated unit, competing for resources in a scarce world. This belief, this story of fundamental separation, is the root of loneliness, of the sense that no one truly understands you, of the feeling that you are fundamentally alone, even in a crowd. Wayne Dyer's entire spiritual teaching was a challenge to this story. He believed, and spent his career making the case, that the story of separation is false. That at the deepest level, you are not separate. You are connected to every living thing, to the same creative force that made everything you see, and that reconnecting with that truth is both the source of genuine peace and the gateway to the true self. YouTube's own data, its analysis of what people are searching for, what they are watching, what they are responding to, points clearly to one specific practice that people are hungry for. A morning practice, at sunrise, 5 minutes, that gives access to the part of you that lives beyond the ego. Here it is. Wayne Dyer developed variations of this practice across 30 years of his morning routine. This is the distilled version. 5 minutes, every morning, ideally at or around sunrise. Because the morning light, the quality of the morning air, the stillness of the world before the day's noise begins, all of these support the practice. But if sunrise is not accessible, whenever you wake up, before your phone, this works. Minute 1. The arrival. Sit comfortably, eyes closed, both feet on the floor if you are seated. Take one slow breath in. Feel the breath entering your body, and say silently or quietly, "I am here, right now. I am here." Not, "I need to be somewhere else." Not, "I have too much to do." I am here, right now, in this body, in this moment, fully present. I am here. Feel the ground beneath you, the chair beneath you, the breath moving through you. That is the arrival. 30 to 60 seconds. Minutes 2 and 3. The release. Still eyes closed, still breathing, and now you release. You let go of yesterday. Not suppress it, not deny it, release it. Say silently, "I release yesterday. I release the conversations I am still running. I release the worries I carried to bed. I release the comparisons. I release the performance. I release all of it. For this moment, it does not serve me here." Then you release tomorrow. I release tomorrow. I release the plans I cannot control. I release the fears of what might happen. I release the need to have it all figured out. For this moment, tomorrow is not here yet. And what remains, when you have released both, is the present moment. Just this, just now, just breath. 60 to 90 seconds. Minutes 3 through 5. The access. This is the part of the practice where you ask a single question. Not a planning question, not a problem-solving question. This question: what is the truest thing about me, right now, in this moment? And you wait, not for a thought, for something deeper, for the sense, the felt sense, of what remains when the ego is quiet. You may not feel it clearly at first. That is fine. The practice of asking, of creating the space, of waiting patiently, is itself the work. Over time, what begins to emerge in that space is the true self. Quiet, still, present, not performing, not comparing, not afraid, just here, just aware, just alive. That is who you are when the ego is quiet. That is what this 5 minutes gives you access to. And the more you access it in the morning, the more accessible it becomes throughout the day. Now I want to talk about what you actually find when the ego gets quiet. Because most people, when they imagine what life would be like without the ego's noise, imagine either emptiness or some kind of generic spirituality that does not feel like them. Neither is true. Wayne Dyer spent the second half of his career describing what he found when he did the work of going beyond the ego. And what he found was not emptiness. It was fullness, a depth of experience, a quality of presence, a genuine aliveness that the ego-based life, for all its noise and activity, never produced. Here's how he described it. The true self is not personal, by which he did not mean impersonal. He meant that it is not defined by the personal biography. It is not the accumulation of your past. It is not your success or failure record. It is not your personality traits, not your family roles, not your cultural identity. It is the awareness itself, the pure consciousness that witnesses your experiences without being defined by them. You have thoughts, but you are not your thoughts. The true self is the one who observes the thoughts. You have feelings, but you are not your feelings. The true self is the one who notices the feelings. You play roles, but you are not the roles. The true self is the one who chooses whether and how to play them. Dyer called this the witnessing presence, and he believed, based on 40 years of his own practice and his reading of every major wisdom tradition, that this witnessing presence is not damaged by experience, not diminished by age, not reduced by failure, not limited by circumstance. It is the same in you now as it was when you were born. It is, in his words, the eternal part of you. And when you live in contact with it, even briefly, even intermittently, it changes everything. Because from that place, the ego's dramas lose their urgency. The comparisons seem less relevant. The approval becomes less necessary. The fear of failure becomes manageable. The need to be right becomes optional, not because you have suppressed them, but because you have found something more fundamental than them, something that was always there, always available, always yours. You just needed to stop making enough noise to hear it. Why is the true self so hard to access? If it is always there, always available, why do so many people spend entire lifetimes without ever really touching it? Wayne Dyer identified 3 layers that cover the true self, 3 specific things that accumulate over a lifetime and gradually obscure the signal. Layer 1, the wound story. Every person carries wounds, things that happened, losses, betrayals, failures, moments that hurt. The wounds themselves are real. They happened, they mattered, but there is the wound, and then there is the story about the wound. And the story is often more limiting than the wound itself. Because that happened, I am this way, I cannot do this, I do not deserve that, people cannot be trusted, the world is not safe for me. These stories, built on real wounds, but extended far beyond their actual scope, become a layer over the true self. A layer that says, stay small, stay defended, stay known. Layer 2, the performed identity. Over years of social experience, most people develop a finely tuned performance. They know how to present themselves, what to emphasize, what to hide, how to manage perceptions, and the performance is not always conscious. It often becomes automatic, habitual, until the performed version of you is so practiced, so familiar, that it feels more real than the actual you. And the actual you gets quieter and quieter, less visible, less practiced, less accessible. Layer 3, the busyness shield. The final layer is perhaps the most modern, the relentless busyness of the contemporary life. Always doing, always consuming, always processing, always responding, never just being, because being, without doing, means encountering yourself. And for many people, that encounter is uncomfortable. Because in the silence, the questions arise. Am I living the life I actually want? Am I the person I actually want to be? Is this it? Busyness prevents those questions. It keeps you moving fast enough that they cannot catch you. But they do not go away. They wait, and the work of finding the true self is in part the work of slowing down enough to let them catch you, and to sit with them honestly, long enough to hear the answers. Here is the complete method, not a shortcut, not a quick fix, a genuine, practical, daily approach for dissolving the 3 layers and making consistent contact with the true self. Step 1. Meet the wound story with compassion, not by ignoring it, not by suppressing it, not by pretending the wound did not happen, By meeting the story with the question, is this story still serving me? Or is it keeping me small, past its usefulness? You can honor what happened, and still choose to stop letting the story about it determine your present. Wayne Dyer did this publicly, with his own childhood. He honored the fact that it was hard. He never minimized it, but he refused to let it be his identity. He said, "What happened to me is not who I am. What I choose now is who I am." That is the move, not erasure. Choice. Step 2. Interrupt the performance with genuine moments. Once per day. Find one situation where you drop the performance, where you say what you actually think, express what you actually feel, respond from your actual values, rather than from the performed role. Even once per day, even briefly, these moments of genuine self-expression create evidence that it is safe to be real, that people can handle the real you, that the real you is interesting, valuable, worth knowing, and that evidence gradually weakens the belief that you need to perform in order to be accepted. Step 3. Create daily space for being, not doing. Being. 10 minutes, every day, without a screen, without a task, without a goal, just sitting, or walking slowly, or simply existing in a space that does not demand anything from you. This is where the true self begins to surface. Not immediately, not dramatically, but subtly, as a quality of presence. A sense of, oh, this is me, not the version I perform. This is actually me. That recognition, small as it may initially be, is the beginning of the journey home. Step 4. Practice the sunrise question daily. What is the truest thing about me right now? Every morning, before the ego's noise begins, in the receptive morning window, for 5 minutes. Over time, the answer becomes clearer, the signal becomes stronger, the contact becomes more reliable, and the true self, which was always there, becomes easier to find, easier to return to, easier to live from. I want to describe what life looks like when you are genuinely living from the true self. Not as an ideal, not as a distant aspiration, as a practical, daily experience that is available to you. It looks like this. You make decisions differently, not from, what will they think, but from, what do I actually believe is right here? Not from fear of judgment, but from alignment with your genuine values. Not from the ego's need to win, but from the true self's desire to contribute. The decisions feel different, cleaner, less anxious, more settled. You relate to people differently, not from behind the performance, from genuine presence. You are actually there, in the conversation, not managing how you are being perceived, not calculating your next move, actually there, and people feel the difference. Even if they cannot name it, they feel more at ease with you, more themselves around you, because genuineness is contagious. When you are real, you give others permission to be real. You respond to difficulty differently, not from the ego's first reaction, which is almost always defensive, comparative, or afraid. From a more settled place. What is actually happening here? What is the wisest response? Who do I choose to be in this moment? Not perfect, not always immediately, but more often, with more consistency, with a shorter recovery time, when you do fall back into the ego. And you experience yourself differently. There is a quality of rest that comes from not performing. A kind of peace that comes from not needing anyone's approval to feel okay about yourself. A freedom that comes from being the same person, regardless of who is watching. That integration, that consistency between inner and outer, is what Wayne Dyer called integrity. Not in the moral sense, in the structural sense. Integrity, the state of being undivided, whole, the same on the inside as the outside. That is the life available when the true self is found and lived from. Your daily ego transcendence protocol. Morning, the sunrise 5-minute practice. Before your phone, before input, arrival, release, access. Throughout the day, when you notice the ego running, approval seeking, comparing, performing, name it. I see you, that is the ego, and ask, what would the true self do here? Evening, one genuine moment of reflection. Where today was I most myself? Where was I performing? What did I learn? That is the complete daily protocol. 3 minutes in the morning, a moment of noticing during the day, 2 minutes of reflection at night. The investment is small, the return is everything. I have a genuine question for you. Not a generic comment prompt. A real question. When was the last time you felt most like yourself? The real you, not the performed version, not the role. Where were you? What were you doing? Who were you with? Tell me in the comments. One specific moment, as concrete as you can be. Because when you find that moment, and describe it, you're pointing at your true self. And that is the most important thing you can do today. Subscribe, stay close. There is more of this work ahead, and it gets deeper as it goes. Before you go, if any part of this video made you stop and think, that's not an accident. Wayne Dyer believed that the right message finds you at exactly the right moment. Maybe this was yours. If it was, hit subscribe. Not because I'm asking you to, but because there are more lessons like this one waiting for you on this channel. And you don't want to miss them. Hit the like button if this added something to your day. It takes 1 second and it helps more people find this content, people who might need it just as much as you did. And turn on notifications, so the next lesson shows up before life gets in the way. I'll see you in the next one. Don't die with your music still in you.